we all got in trouble for that. So we had like all signs in the back of the car, but we decided to call it off. We came here instead, and how wild this place is. To do it again? We probably will, but I'd put you in the loop when we're going to be filmed now. But it will be explosive, but much more so than the vigil.
Explosive in the moment, or explosive subsequently when it goes online? And
post. I think in the moment everyone will just like come up and sign petitions, which are deeply anti-Semitic.
Well, what's this about?
We're doing a political stunt, which I can't really say on camera.
Okay.
And we were going to do it last week, but we aborted because it was too risky.
We're here in the park.
Hello. We're going to do it outside of the park.
Edgware Road?
It was going to be either Edgware Road or somewhere like that, so you can imagine the demographic we were appealing to.
What, the Edgware Road? We're talking about Beirut, or are we talking about
well, it's crazy. I've been seeing lots of videos of you at Parliament Square. Well, you've been popping up on different Trafalgar Square.
He's famous on Star TV now.
not see, Joseph?
I don't know whether they're actually no one's.
They removed Churchill's statue and they've got him up there. In fact, he's going like this.
What's my pose? What's my pose?
Your pose is you've got a can or something. You're holding up.
Tango.
Which way around was Churchill's? Was he that way or?
Well, no, be fair, Joseph, it started that way and then it went there.
Well, Steve's going to start the other way around and then he's going to go that way eventually when he wins this battle.
Didn't President Obama remove Churchill's bust from the White House? And then Trump brought it back, I guess?
Yes, I believe so.
So one day you'll be there, Steve, one day you'll be there and there'll be a statue to you and I'll be standing under it going, I once knew this guy, and they'll be standing there with a can.
I don't know if it's going to be wise to admit in the future, when the Liberals and the lefties take over, that you know this guy.
Exactly.
I mean...
What do you mean when? That's what we're going to prevent.
That's how it works. Is he becomes famous, then we remember any of us. Okay, you just won't want to know any of us, right? That's
you heard though, they put a date in for a snap election on the 28th of February.
We hadn't heard that now.
So,
we probably are. Yeah. 28th of February.
And so, are you standing?
Potentially, yeah.
So, future leader, UK Independent Party.
Just because you're
Sharon,
standing
watch
doesn't
yourself.
mean A, I'm going to win anything. B, doesn't mean I'm going to have any position of influence.
Are UKIP, do they have Islamophobic parts? So I read through the entire, like, a lot of what they say I agree with.
Yeah.
And then I got to the whole part about banning the hijab, and that was a little problematic for me because I believe in freedom of religion, I mean, as a liberal, unless someone's religion negatively affects me or others, I'm all for people doing what they please. And that was
What's this rumour that you're not coming back? Well, it's not a rumour. You were saying it repeatedly last week. Sorry?
Were you getting Munich for today? How'd you get Munich today? For what?
Getting what?
Getting me arrested for?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Someone said the Rogers chat, you said you get Munich today.
No idea what you're talking
Good luck
about.
in
You manage that yourself. You don't need help.
Who's your best mate?
Which one?
I've got to be honest.
Are you coming, apparently?
So, me and Mr. Rax had a little bit of a sweepstake. How long it would be before Omar came back? Both of us said today.
He was going around all last week saying, this is my last week, this is my last week, I'm not coming back.
Some people are addicted to crack, other people are addicted to Speaker's Corner.
I'm sorry, but I went to 4 farewell concerts of Simply Red. This is the last tour, this is the last tour, this is the last tour, 4 times.
Yeah, I mean, Mick Hucknall's a bit of a twat as well.
So people's goodbyes do take a little bit of time. Look how many times Frank Sinatra was in.
Can you just explain to the viewers who Simply Red are?
Simply Red was
Anybody under 40?
Was that a bar or something?
That means I'll be holding back the years.
Holding back the years.
The guy with the curly hair.
Well done.
Look at Afghan man. Showing his age.
And do you know what he was? He was a ginger as well. He was a ginger.
Did he have a jewel in his tooth?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Gold, yeah.
What was the most famous stuff? It's there, but it's not coming.
4 farewell.
No. Falling from the sky.
What song?
My arm.
I know.
Aren't Simply Red haram?
No.
They're not haram.
Wait,
they are haram.
Yeah, reaching for the stars, something like that. Not falling.
No,
So
they are still
star.
around.
There
They are
is
still
one
around.
of them. We were doing one of the others.
Holding back the years, wasn't there?
that's the one.
Holding back.
No, not that one.
There is one about stars as well.
Not about
Come on, who's going to get the smartphone
This is
out?
going to get
famous.
so
That
many
was
views,
famous.
Mr. Rax. I reckon this is going to hit 100,000 views overnight.
Big up Simply Red, whoever they are. No, I know him.
It's time for Ian's rock memorabilia at Speaker's Corner. We're now going to have a rock memorabilia 20 minutes at Speaker's Corner. We can now talk about
this is what happens when man like Modine isn't here.
We can talk about my life at Hammersmith Odeon in the 70s. Yeah, that's right. I won't say what went on at the Hammersmith Odeon in the 90s.
But UKIP, Islamophobia, are the Islamophobia? Do you believe that word exists?
The lead singer.
It's a made-up word that's been created in recent times to try and stop criticism of Islam.
And would you say that people, how would you describe people that hate Muslims? What word would you use to describe them?
People that hate the people that hate the individuals.
They hate the collective. The collective and the ideas that fuel that. Yeah.
Well, I don't like the ideology.
But what would you?
And I'd say UKIP is similarly concerned about the influence of the influence of the impact
You'll get Mick coming on.
You're right. Sorry about that. I was just walking by.
Sorry, say it again.
I would say there are many people in UKIP, including its leadership,
No, he's right.
that has concerns
I think it would be if I
about
played the
impact
whole thing.
of Islam on British society.
What do you mean? Which impact? Like, what do you mean when it?
So let's take the one that they explicitly mention in the what do you call it? What's the book called?
Manifesto.
The manifesto. There we go. Which is the hijab. They're opposed to the hijab.
I don't think they're opposed to the hijab, the niqab, face cover.
No, it says hijab. Well, it did when I read it 2 years ago. They might have updated and made the niqab now.
I mean, I'd be surprised that it has an issue with the hijab, and I don't have a problem with the hijab. I have a problem with face coverings. And I thought that was its position as well. So like in France, like in Belgium, like in many countries across Europe who have banned face coverings.
And do you extend that to any face coverings in public? So I see lots of Asians walking around with the little pollution mask, which is bizarre because it actually doesn't stop pollution. But would you extend it to that as well?
Well, to them it does, doesn't to the world.
No, but to them as well. Apparently it
gets through, does it?
Completely
No, even there's a religion.
Janus. So they don't need any
don't
folks.
walk out without a mask.
Debate, bro.
Would you tell them?
Film a debate, man.
Yeah. And then anything that I personally would apply, I would apply completely consistently across religions. So, for example,
What you got to say then?
What I've got to say is, Speaker's Corner, I love your videos, but it's
It's not a free society then.
Yeah, you just disrupt us,
define a free society. We already have we're not the opposite of a free society is an anarchist society, isn't it?
No, that's a free society in a way that I mean that.
I like
No, I like you.
Because I like you.
I like you too as well. Anyway,
Because I like you.
It's just banter. You get me?
Because I like you.
I like you too. I like you too.
I mean, that is what you're advocating for.
That's what you're
society.
Again, but you're being absolutist, aren't you? And just saying if one facet that some people in the religion follow by. I mean, there are many Muslim countries that don't allow face
I get
covering.
you,
So
but the definition of a freedom of religion, I
it
think
isn't
in
do
the Western
whatever you
society,
want. It's
no.
not do whatever you
No,
want.
in the
long as it
Western
doesn't harm others,
society,
usually.
it comes to an individual level. If an individual has a religion and he wants to practice it, he has that freedom.
In fact,
So in your and her, yeah, of course.
in fact, the Christian bakers were allowed not to bake for the gay couple. It was in the High Court just last year. They were allowed to. It was deemed their right as religious freedom. They did not have to serve that gay couple.
No, the point was his manifesto now, your whatever manifesto.
There's limits.
It's not a free manifesto for freedom of religion.
Yeah, you don't get out. Absolute. Yeah, you can't. You're right. You're right.
There are already limits. That's what I said. You can't do anything by saying, "Well, my religion tells me to."
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
No, but if it's a limit, there is no freedom.
But does
If
it not
it's
come back to the
10%
harm
limit,
principle?
50% limit.
Absolutist argument.
No, but sir, you're right. You cannot harm somebody in the name of your religion. If you're some type of crazy religion that you have to sacrifice your firstborn, you cannot do that.
Of course.
You cannot do
So
that.
therefore, we don't have freedom of religion. Is your argument?
You cannot do that.
Because there are limitations.
No, but
can
we
just
can
come
use
back to
our
say, 'cause
logic.
Steve is classically
But we
liberal,
can use
as I
our
understand
logic.
from the conversation we've
sir.
had.
And nobody will kill his son or daughter because of his religion.
I was actually trying to understand Steve's position.
Personally, my own position, I am not 100% sure myself that face coverings should be banned, but I'm wavering in that direction.
So my
you're not sure?
So my issue,
I'm not 100% sure.
My biggest.
You're not even sure what you think.
But what's the problem? What's the problem?
Do you have an absolute position on every subject?
No, but let me see. What's your problem? What's with it? I don't see what the issue is. What is it was called
face coverings.
Yeah,
because
what is the issue?
It's closing off. It's shutting off a certain section of society. And I think societies are better and stronger the more we can come together, the more we can communicate, the more we can understand each other. That is a barrier.
Can we take this conversation up at an intellectual level, because we're kind of like we're kind of so issues with face covering and head coverings are when
not head,
even head, I'd say, is when something is enforced by the state. And so to give context to that, within Judaism, Islam, hair coverings are required, a requirement by religious law. If you don't cover
and Hindu,
fine, and Jainism and many what I'm trying to say is there are serious consequences to people within those communities if they choose not to cover their hair. So if you're a Jewish woman that's married, or if you're a Muslim woman and you're living in Saudi Arabia, or you're living in an ultra-Orthodox neighborhood community, you will be in a community within a society like Britain, which is largely free. You will face societal consequences. So you may have difficulty.
No, we're talking about England.
No, can I just
we're talking about England. No, why are you going back there?
Mate, I'm going to walk over here because you literally cut into everybody. Shout with your right mouth. You can give your opinion after I've given my opinion, but learn to shut your mouth.
Easy, man.
It's literally every time I talk over you shout me down.
No, because you're going
come on.
I'm trying to make a point.
Back in.
If you don't like my point, that's fine. Go away.
Yeah, jump back in quick.
So what I'm trying to say, within a society like Britain,
I love these two guys.
At least we can take it in the right spirit.
Yeah, you can. Go. I'll let you bun me next time. Don't worry.
Maybe not.
No. That's with the hand at the end.
It's horrible to be cut off by the community. That's not nice. But there is still an element of freedom there. Within a society that forces something by law, there is no choice, and there are consequences to those actions. So for me, within the UK, as much as I dislike religious communities rejecting members of that community who choose not to adhere to certain standards, there's still a freedom and there's still a choice there. Within religious communities where there's complete control, theocracies. Sorry, what?
Where's the line drawn?
Where's the line within? So the line draw is when it's state enforced. If there are consequences enforced by the state,
then there's no freedom.
So that's what I'm saying, and that's when it's a problem.
So you're happy with the community drawing the line, but you don't want the state to draw the line.
So then therefore I should stay madman, innit?
So to try and
get me like what?
So the issue with when it's communal is not nice. A community can choose to reject anybody it chooses to reject, but there's no consequences. You're not thrown in jail. You don't risk physical harm. So weird. With a state level, there's the threat of violence. Ultimately, the state has a monopoly of violence.
That's true.
And basically, all the laws that you follow are under the threat of violence. If you refuse to pay taxes,
way to describe it.
No, but if you think about it, it's true.
That's what the state is. The state has a monopoly on violence.
Financial fines, is that a threat of violence?
Okay, so what happens if you don't pay your fine?
You get put in prison.
Exactly.
But I don't view that as the threat of violence.
And if you refuse to go to prison, what happens? If you follow something down to its conclusion,
physically molested and assaulted. Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
The state is the only authorised.
I thought you've been to prison.
You're almost arguing for anarchy, then.
No.
You're arguing against.
I'm for nation states, and I recognise it's better to have the state as the only ones that can enforce violence than lots of militias, like we'd say in Pakistan or various places like that, or Afghanistan.
Jewish security forces in London.
Jewish security forces.
Well, how would you describe them?
Same as G4 security guards.
No, this is great.
They're a security force. Security officers.
What do they do? What does this Jewish security force do?
Well, they patrol. I don't know what they actually do when they confront a criminal.
They call the police.
Is that all they do?
Yeah, they've got no authority. They can't use. They can use reasonable force that any citizen can use.
But
they're not a private security. So they are literally, Jews are susceptible. So if you go to any synagogue, we have private security, and that's all they are. If the terrorists actually came to a synagogue with a weapon, like, what are these security guys?
However, that's not to say that they don't abuse. There might be instances where they do abuse their power, and that. Well, you can't say that.
I can't, because I know the Shomrim.
I'm sorry, you can't. No.
Who's he talking about?
You don't know that.
Who's he talking about? Who is he talking about?
Legally,
no. Who is he talking about?
Are supposed to be prescribed as just being that. You're right. Very much security guards being that. However, we don't know. They could go over their bounds. They could try and enforce their laws upon their own community.
I think they probably don't. I think they
we don't know that. We don't know that.
I do. I live in that community.
However,
I'm an Orthodox Jew.
However, if they do, then that's wrong.
You know.
If a Muslim does it, if a Muslim does it to say a Muslim patrol say you can't drink in this area, that's wrong. If they don't want to, if they say, oh, you're Jewish, you go inside, cover your hair, you're shameful. That's wrong. You know what I mean?
Enforcement
of
Jewish people not following.
Not at all. It's got nothing to do with the religious community. All they are, they patrol Jewish neighbourhoods to report on anti-Semitism. They're called the Shomrim.
Only anti-Semitism, not general.
So they do get. If they say like street violence and stuff, they'll call the police for that as well. But they were set up because the Jewish community has typically been attacked, and so we need a mechanism. And if you see their cars, they actually look like police cars, except they have Shomrim written on them. There's not many of them. They are not allowed to use force. They don't use force. Got nothing to do with religion.
Okay, can I put my
you say nothing to do with
tinfoil hat?
There is definitely a lot to do with religion.
Okay. Sorry.
Can I put my tinfoil hat? When they're gonna turn into Mossad and stuff.
Religious people, they always deny it. Nothing to do with religion.
Yes, I did hear you, Mo. That's why I did the sarcastic laughter. When they're going to turn into Mossad, it was hysterical. That's why I laughed so much from my stomach.
You hear me before, what did I say?
You said, when are they tinfoil hat? Yeah, and that's why I said it was a really funny joke.
Sarcasm.
Yeah, it was hysterical. Yeah. When are you going to blow up a bus, Mo? Tinfoil hat on.
Fair point, man. Anyway, where
so getting back to the point. So coming back to what we were originally saying, is what true?
That's what I just said.
Carry on.
You're a bit annoyed, so I think it's true.
Just speak out. Come on, speak.
Okay, so when Muslims
the coverings, you're fine with that.
So again, I believe in freedom of religion. I believe in freedom of communities to set their own standards as long as they don't damage
human
members
rights.
within.
What when there is an aspect of the religion, of the ideology, that is in contradiction to the local law? What do you think of that?
So then you follow the local law.
Yeah, they have to move. They go, and traditionally communities have escaped persecution and gone to other lands, and that's why they set up shop in different countries.
Why I would say that doesn't make something necessarily morally right. Democracies can enact regressive and oppressive laws. So just because the society's voted a certain way, or the consensus is a certain way, that doesn't mean that the morality is
but you would
with
still
the consensus.
respect it.
So within,
if you decide to stay, you have to.
So with certain exceptions.
If only everyone thought like that. Unfortunately, not everyone does.
With certain exceptions. So within Nazi Germany, laws were voted. The Nazi Party was voted in. Laws were enacted that made that excessively oppressed the Jewish people. There were marriage laws, there were business laws, there were all kinds of laws that limited life.
So if I can't imagine this ever happening, but if the British government, British people, British democracy concluded that halal and kosher slaughter were unlawful and stopped them, would that be an exception where you might have to...
No.
To answer as a Jewish person, there's a huge distinction between kosher slaughter being outlawed and preventing me from eating meat that's produced in the UK, to forbidding me from marrying into other citizens, forbidding me from doing business with other citizens, forbidding me from entering certain areas. It's not an existential threat to me.
It doesn't change this theology.
I can still practice Judaism, albeit I'll be a vegan.
So that's interesting. You brought something up there. So you are prevented from marrying someone who's not of the Jewish faith. Is that what you said?
So no, that's not what I said.
If that was a law.
So it's a really, really strong. So religions, Islam, Judaism, Catholicism, all say you can only marry within the faith.
They all say that.
In Islam,
if you're a woman, you can't.
No,
a woman can't marry a Jewish man.
So you said something about a religion you don't know.
Can a Muslim woman marry?
In Islam, Muslim man allowed to marry Jewish or Christian women, and he's not allowed to convert her to Islam, and he's responsible to take her to church or to the Tamba.
Can a Muslim woman marry me?
But just
no, that's all I'm saying.
No, you're talking the opposite way. But
but there is an exception to your rule.
Literally, we're stating
you have the same rule.
Within Judaism, a man and a woman can't marry. It's it's equal.
But in Muslims,
That's
a man has
Muslim woman can marry.
So I want to
Muslim woman can
human
marry.
love.
a Muslim woman can't marry. No, she can't. The Quran says she can't.
If you don't force her to change her religion,
She can marry whoever she wants.
No.
Say that.
He's
This
right.
Muslim says no.
No, because the lineage from Jewish people comes from mother, and the lineage in the Islamic laws it comes from father. So his children will be not Muslim.
okay, can I say something? Can I say something about it?
But can we just get back to the
No,
point?
I want to. So just
Sorry, I took it
my brother, what you said is not correct, because the wife of the Prophet Muhammad was a Jewish woman,
Who converted to
and
Islam.
her family come from her.
But she converted to Islam.
Oops.
She converted.
Doesn't matter. He was talking about something else.
No.
He's talking about.
You smoke?
I'm not smoking.
I don't know why it's about.
So Jews would consider her children.
She was a Jewish woman, and her
You're getting your arguments muddled up.
No,
Jews
no.
would consider her children Jewish, even though she married Muhammad and converted to Islam.
yes.
And Muslims would consider her children Muslim because her
He
father.
married her before.
It just shows the nonsense of it all.
Doesn't matter.
No, he married her before he became prophet. No, Khadija. He married her before
she became a Muslim
prophet. No, he married her before he became a prophet. She was a businesswoman. He was working for her.
I get that.
You know, you need to
But
read your
when
history.
Islam came,
Okay,
she
can
became
we
a
get back to the
Muslim.
point? You guys can
Sorry.
have your theology. So we've established that Muslim men, except this gentleman here disagrees, but that's fine. Muslim men and Muslim women can't marry pagans. They can't marry idolaters.
No, they can't. Yeah, you're asking of the book.
Jews can only marry Jews. Catholics can only marry Catholics.
By law of who?
By the religious laws that, and the community
You made
standards.
it. You made the law.
Atheists can marry anyone, whoever they damn well fall in love with. Isn't that beautiful?
I think that is.
Isn't that
I
beautiful?
think
Not
that
in all
is.
cases.
So,
All right, continue, brother. Continue.
so I,
Catholic
What are you telling us? What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say?
So what I'm
Going back
basically agreeing
beyond that.
with Steve's point. So I stated that in Nazi Germany, Jews weren't allowed to marry by state law Aryans. They weren't allowed non-Jews. They were basically only allowed to marry their own. Marry amongst themselves. Thank you.
John Rose Twitter.
Good to meet you, John. Sorry about that. Completely destroyed my team.
Germany.
So the big, you're usually famous. Usually famous.
You're not allowed to. Hold on.
Selfie time. Selfie time.
Oh my God. Do we need to pay you now? Do we need to pay you? Do we need to pay you now?
Alright, continue. Nazi Germany.
I arranged that, by the way.
Let's go beyond the marriage thing. Let's go back to
it comes back to what we were saying though. Within a religious community where it's not enforced by law, I think a community is free to set its own standards, even if I dislike those standards. It's when it becomes state enforced. If the government is saying at threat of jail and ultimately threat of violence, you can't marry other people within that community, that's where it becomes problematic. So kosher slaughter, halal slaughter, Jews, Muslims can survive without it. I would argue against it because we're in a free society. I have that option, but I don't think that is grounds for the Jewish community rebelling, rising up in arms against the oppressive state because no one's harmed by that.
But you have the right though in a free society.
I don't think Jews should be taking up arms if the government.
Not
arms.
Taking up arms.
Muslims be taking up arms if halal slaughter is done.
Never.
They're saying the same thing, man.
But they.
Not arms.
We're
However,
saying the same thing.
You can still protest against it. You can still voice your concern.
You can live with it if they ban it.
Yes,
So
we
it's
can.
okay. You will not eat
By
kosher
importing,
food.
no, you just import it.
You import it. It's already banned in many
No, my
European
point is not
countries.
imported.
Halal is already banned in many European countries with large Muslim communities.
That's beyond the
So
point
if
though.
halal comes from outside, Muslim can adapt.
If you're not allowed to, if you're not allowed to marry, if you're not allowed to marry, then you can't pick up arms.
To ban halal imports as well.
I think the only time any oppressed community should be picking up arms is when there is an existential threat to their existence.
Like the not marrying thing with Nazi
So
Germany.
the Nazi Germany wasn't just about non-marriage; it ended in gas chambers for the Jews. In those instances, I supported the party. No, have you ever been to Speaker's Corner, bro? We're all angry. That's why we come here.
No.
I have a question. Can I have
Quick question.
what about divorce in a Jewish religion?
does it
Is it
work?
allowed to have a divorce with women?
Who signs off on it?
So in the Jewish community, just like the Muslim community, just like wider society, divorce is allowed. I think with any ancient societies like Islam, like Judaism, there are problems. So within Islam, divorce can be difficult for a woman. Within Judaism, a divorce.
Yeah,
and I'm answering.
Well, in Judaism, how is it difficult for a woman?
So in Judaism, it's even more difficult than Islam.
She has to go through more hoops than that.
So yeah, there's more hoops to go through. It's more difficult for her to
sign off on it.
Why is that? Why is that?
Because children.
Because Judaism,
men don't look after
the laws of Judaism were basically set in stone between 3,000 and 2,000 years, well, 1,500 years ago. Beyond that scope, we've lost the mechanism to establish law. So many of Jewish law are defined by men. They're enactments of what we call the Supreme Court. We had the Royal Courts of Justice in Judaism called the Sanhedrin. We can't change those laws without it. And because we don't have it, most of our laws are locked in quite the historical context. And so society 2,000 years ago was more sexist, was more patriarchal than it is today. And that's why we're locked with many laws.
Why is the process about divorce, before you got a divorce? There's any process?
So there's in Judaism we have something called the marriage contract, which is the ketubah, and there's certain protections that the man guarantees to the woman. But when it comes to divorce, how it works in Judaism is the man serves a get, which is the divorce paper, which is like the opposite of the marriage contract. But a woman can't serve a get, only a man can serve a get, unless we have the Sanhedrin, which is the Supreme Court.
Must
and then
be
it can
reason for divorce.
But
There is a place called Rainbow Gathering.
yes, there was. But only
And it's
Orthodox or in any?
all equal.
But we should,
All of us.
Is that only Orthodox or is that in all Judaism?
So there is only such a thing, in my opinion, as Orthodox Judaism.
Rainbow.
More progressive movements are called Reform or Liberal, and they went to change the traditional values, which is fine. I still recognise them as Jews, but recognising that Jewish law was defined and established by these.
Yeah, but there's people more extreme.
There's not people.
We're all one though.
Left to heart.
They're Orthodox. They're not Reform.
Okay, so you're an Orthodox.
Rainbow.
Exactly. They're more extreme than you, though.
Oh yeah.
They make their
We're all one.
Oh, you don't know what I make. What happened?
You're an Orthodox Jew living in the 21st century.
Yeah.
Do you think it is right that your wife has to go through a whole stack of extra process than you do
No, and
in the 21st century?
If you speak to most Orthodox Jews, they also don't think it's right. There is a huge.
You would disagree with the...
Again, it comes back to the Royal Courts of Justice. The Royal Courts of Justice define what Jewish law is, and if we had the Royal Courts of Justice, the Sanhedrin today, they could enact and repeal older laws.
Who you can love?
I can only love you, brother. I can only love you, my brother.
So then we are alright.
Yes, we're all right. We're all right. Yeah,
happy.
we're all right.
Quick question.
Peace, love, unity, and respect.
Quick question. Can I endorse the Orthodox? What would you recommend?
The fact that the Irish were nothing, they were thought of as subhuman, they were thought of as idiots, and they were white. But the Irish are having other higher living standards than the English today. It doesn't make sense in comparison to the racial IQ. Can I say something about racial IQ? And this is the thing: is like I do believe that there are elements of differences between certain races and performances and things like strength. But the far right, they exaggerate it. They make it out as if there's no way black people are ever able to assimilate to Western culture, and they love to. And think about Jared Taylor. He never talks about the 1950s. He never talks about Black Wall Street. He never talks about the Nigerian Americans. And someone brought that up, and he just sorry.
No, sorry, I need to stop. But where I agree with you is that there are currently differences between certain cultures right now. When people say race, right? When I was talking about race not being real, the reason being is because, like Ralph was pointing out, is that there's certain clusters of supposed genetics that are more populated within certain regions, and this is why scientists still use race as an example. Yeah. Just a fancy way of saying there are different cultures in different fucking places, right? Yeah. So when you have different cultures and you have different forms of kind of like, I guess, getting through life, here we prioritize desk work, we prioritize abstract thought, we problem solving. That is our main thing here. In the fields of Sudan, in the fields of the Dogon, it's hunting, it's farming, it's all of this stuff that means survival. We don't have to worry about survival, other people do. So our genetics replicate that and they express that, right? And the point is that with the Flynn theory is that the more modernized certain places become, their IQ starts to raise. You see a raise in IQ. So it's not an idea that currently between different cultures there is a difference in IQ, which I'm going to get on in a second, difference in IQ. It's just the fact that they believe and they want to They want to firm it down that it's set for life. That's it. It's never changing. It's never gonna. It's never gonna change.
I was debating these neo-Nazis on this free speech thing on Facebook. Oh yeah, they're hilarious. There's like a beef between what they refer to as the the Mediterranean Europeans and the Nordic Europeans, and
the Mediterraneans who on average have bigger dicks than all of them. I'm sorry.
They're not basing it on that. They're not basing it on that.
They're not basing it on that, are they? The strongest men in the world.
Or they say you got invaded by black people, so your genes are the
strongest men in the world. Like Eastern European, Mediterranean kind of thing.
Well, the people with the biggest record in lifting weights are from Canada and Iceland and stuff like that.
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah.
No, but like,
no,
you know, I ain't racist, I ain't anyway. So someone put up a thing saying like, oh, the Nordic Europeans are beautiful and they're great and they're way better than the Mediterraneans. So then some Mediterranean ethno-nationalists, which is kind of funny, there's kind of like a beef between them, puts up all the things that Nordic Europeans had invented and all the things that Mediterranean Europeans had invented. Yeah? No, and I'm laughing my ass off, right? Yeah. And then when I tried to type in, he goes, I'm sorry, your comment cannot go in because this post has been flagged and deleted. By the alt-right! So it's just like, they're the most hypocritical people. This is a free speech event, but they're like, no, we have to flag it. And then I went back to their one and I said, you guys are fucking hypocrites. You're mad because the Mediterranean civilized your dumbasses and you couldn't take it, that's why you flagged the video.
But I think that's one of the biggest tragedies, man, especially when we're talking about Italy, we're talking about Greece, we're talking about all of these places that, like you said, are Mediterranean. The amount that they've contributed to Western culture. And the fact that at certain points you have to ask people, do you consider Greeks as white? Yeah. Because a lot of people don't consider Greeks as white.
They didn't, that's the thing, Italians weren't even white for a very long time. That's what they had was, like, I'm sorry to say this, what? Spick. I'm sorry.
Oh, I've never heard of those.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, you never heard of those? The thing is, I think Italians and Greeks were more white than they are nowadays in ancient times because it was really soon of the Arabs and the Muslims who settled in those areas, a big heavy mixing. So that's why they do have more like the odd skin brown out. When you look at the north, they're a bit more blonde, a bit more red. Not too much, but you know, I'm not saying that they were dramatic.
No, of course.
They just looked more dramatic than they did.
Absolutely.
Another thing, and Ralph said this point, this is when we were over there, and look, I'm not down, you know.
No, go ahead.
You know, he says that us other minorities we need to stand with whites. But I mean, I'm not trying to be rude. The most economically advanced nations are the most multi-ethnic nations. Like, and I know you're going to be like, it always has been. If you look at every country east of Germany and Italy, right? They are a lot more white. No offense, and a lot more dangerous, a lot more less accepted.
But I think where people miss the kind of like idea.
Germans are harmless.
I'll give you an example. Where people seem to miss most of this is that when a metropolitan city, right, takes the good elements of all the surrounding cultures, that's when it starts to prosper and thrive. And this is systematic within all cultures around the world. But for some reason, they still seem to think that an ethno, like they're talking about Poland, right? Like I had Stefan Molyneux who said that he went up to Poland and he was like, I'm not an ethno-nationalist, but man, seeing is believing. He went to Poland and he was like, there's no crime except blah, blah, blah. So he was alluding to the fact that diversity supposedly increases crime, etc. So I was like, you know, that's actually interesting. Let me go and have a look at it. Poland has the same crime rate as like Italy, Germany, which places are very diverse. Spain as well, very diverse. All of these places, and it has the same kind of like, don't get me wrong, it's definitely lower than the UK. I think we're like 1.2 while they're like 0.8. But all of these kind of conflations, all of these exaggerations of diversity doesn't work. I'm like, where's your proof?
No, diversity does work, but it has to, in my opinion, be like a police state, like Singapore.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't want my country to be a police state.
But the thing is, when you say a police state, are you talking about...
It means like literally littering. You get arrested for littering, for that smaller crime. That's why everything needs to be...
The reason I agreed is because I thought when you meant a police state, I just thought you meant proper monitoring of the kind of labour that is coming in, as opposed to people who are kind of here to kind of hustle, make a dealing, illegal criminality, etc. Like... I think it was Hyde was talking about this. No, I think it was Kyle was talking about this the other day. How like we disagree with criminals coming to visit here, political activists and blah blah blah. But for like the Italian mafia crime syndicate family, they have like offices and freaking hotels ready, airports ready to like welcome them, kind of thing. So it's one of those things where I agree with you in a police state in the sense that vetting the kind of labour that comes through, I think that's perfectly rational. That's like a university. You have criteria in a university to kind of go and learn and do whatever is productive.
It works in Singapore because it's a city-state. It's not a actual proper nation in terms of like Britain, for example, which obviously had people before the whole multicultural state happened.
A lot of the migration is coming into city areas of the UK. It's not really going. It's not really going to suburbs.
Yeah. And then I really should have remembered the whole
countryside in like 50 or 100 years time. You know?
Serious?
Yeah.
Are they planning expansions?
If current immigration levels continue, there'll be hardly any English countryside because there won't be enough space. You know.
oh, that's not too bad.
Oh god.
I was gonna say, no, it's just when you go out there and then you're like, you know what, I really feel some chicken and chips right now. Oh, there are no chicken and chip shops out here. Just absolutely no, just seaside cafes. I was like, I miss London and I hate London.
When we take a look at the average IQ of people from Sierra Leone, a war-torn country, I mean, it's doing good now. It's 91, and then we compare that to East Asian country. You know what I mean? It doesn't add up.
But the thing is, I was going to say, even with IQ, right, the concept of IQ is actually an incomplete answer to the actual question of success and, I guess, intelligence incomplete. Because,
you know, there's a map and it shows, and it's very badly drawn because it draws all the South Saharan African nations in red, but the northern Arab nations in like yellow. But what is it? Like Nigeria and Ghana. Yeah, like that's not accurate. That's just not accurate. You look at Sierra Leone, it's in complete red. But it's 92. It's higher than any other.
But you notice there are other countries that have accepted free markets. They have done much better.
Angola? Are you mad? Angola's like it's very rich, but it's like their human rights levels. The people don't even have clean water. I mean, the rich are rich, the poor are effing poor.
But that's the thing. Economy. You know, if you have a free market, it does like make the GDP higher. I just feel like if China embraced actual free market, that would be like the biggest economy right now. You know.
Let's take a look at the GDP countries.
Yeah, that'd be slightly insane.
Hold on a minute.
That'd be a bit insane.
China has a higher GDP than Russia.
Really?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, China is in second place.
You remember, China has a huge population compared to Russia.
China and India are in second place. I think Germany and Japan are like somewhere in fifth.
We're talking about GDP per capita. That means the average person on how much they make in comparison. So obviously, there's probably more rich Chinese for every Russian. But we're saying on average, China still have a way to go to developing via middle class.
Just a quick one. We know that the people that tend to reproduce the most are the East Asians, kind of thing. But
it's Africans nowadays.
Nowadays?
Yeah. They're going to be a third of the population in the world.
Oh no, actually you're right. In terms of the rate of increase, because I saw a graph, and Africans were like the second in terms of the projection of their population. But I think China's hit a stall right now. They're kind of like
neck and neck with East Asia and Africa.
Can I say something about things like the reason my birth rates
coming. We're coming.
No, the reason my birth rates stagnate is because the country becomes more developed, and that's just like in Mexico. This is why a majority of the immigration coming over to the United States come from El Salvador and Honduras. They're not coming from Mexico. The reason they're building the wall is because of NAFTA and the fact that no more jobs are going to be in Mexico, and that's why it's like, no, you know what I mean? The more a country modernized, and if you look at Japan, their birth rates are stagnating so much they're having to give houses away for free. So they ain't got no multiculturalism, they ain't got no feminism, they ain't got no cultural Marxism. They got a lot of video games.
Absolutely, they've got nothing.
It's about modernization of a country.
I was going to say as well, we were talking about this earlier, and we were talking about how when you tend to get poorer families, they have more children and stuff like that. But that fits into what you were saying about when a country becomes a little bit more modernized, the birth rate starts to go down. It's because, like you say, back in the day, when you had poorer families, more children meant more workers for your general farm. That's what it meant back in the day. And I think we still have that biological kind of programming as human beings. Like you say, we get modern, and then we don't really do those jobs anymore. We don't really need that much labour anymore.
By the neo-Marxism, what they've done completely destroyed the religious morals, the Christianity, the culture, by not having a means to feel like, oh, we need to create children in order to create the next society. You know, what everyone's saying, like, oh, I don't want to get kids, I don't want to get married, I just want to work my career, or, I'll just have at least 1 or 2 kids at the very least,
I think that's also...
It's not just here in the West, but it's also in Japan and South Korea.
I was going to agree, but I wouldn't put it down to religion or Christianity. I would put it down to the morals and the kind of like concept that Christianity and so on so puts forth. Like the thing of like...
It's like go forth and multiply.
Well, not even just to go forth and multiply, but live for other people as well. I think nowadays people tend to live for themselves a little bit more, and it's a similar kind of like concept. I don't know, everyone whenever they talk about this, they seem to blame Marxism for this. I still have yet to find anything within Marxism that promotes that, apart from a disagreement of the current situation that Marx found himself within that Russian.
Have you read the Communist
Manifesto? I ordered it. So it's at home today.
I think you'll get to a bit where he says that, you know, in order to change the culture, you must destroy the family unit. And obviously, that's what the professors in universities have been
tend to refer to.
Yeah, that's what
that's insane.
Yeah, like 25% of professors are neo-Marxists, so they don't believe that hierarchy is based on genetics. They believe it's a social construction and that humans are malleable. So that if you just change them from a very early age, you can make them whatever you want.
The reason I was going to say, the reason that they may have come to that theory is the study of the bonobos, the bonobo apes. They, like, in comparison, where the bonobos don't necessarily have a hierarchy and they don't have these concepts of fidelity, you know, monogamy, etc., all of that kind of stuff. Whereas you see in chimps and you see in gorillas, they have all of this. Violence is quite common, crime is quite common, but in bonobo societies, it's a rarity to see stuff like that. And the reason I will say there's some validity to that is because there's tribes in Africa that apparently emulate that. The Dogons being one of them. A gentleman, I was watching the BBC documentary, and he went to visit the Dogons, but this was for astronomy, and he was saying that rape, murder, these concepts are near enough non-existent within these cultures, and these are primitive. These are primitive tribes. So I think it's a question of
that is the romanticized Marxist belief that we should go back to our primitive side where we didn't have cities or communities, or just like families and tribes. But even his idea of the family is that both males and females should have monogamous relationships, and that children shouldn't be raised by the family. They should be in like these, you know, mass educational camps or whatever. Yep.
My acknowledgement of this whole kind of like is I remember always being like 5 women for 1 man.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I kind of think that's like, okay, so
because you want the best genes, you know, and that if you have the top man reproducing with a woman, therefore the next generation is going to.
That's where we do start going into the more male constructed thing in society. And the reason I will say this, I'll let Tiger go first because I don't really want to. I don't want to dominate the whole conversation. So I'll let Tiger go.
I disagree with a lot of people are like, you know, blaming the birth rates on feminism and things like, oh, because we gave women too many rights.
It's not exclusively, but it is I think it's a big.
And people are blaming the incel or the incel rebellion on feminism. Yeah, on feminism.
Well, that's a reaction to feminism.
And they're saying, I think Paul Joseph Watson, who's blatantly an incel, he called it the pussy inflation, and it's the fact that women tend to go higher up. And in my opinion, look, you either up your game or you end up a second-class citizen. Like, stop blaming women because they just don't want to fuck you anymore. And it's like, I just think it's silly, and I just think it's just. And you saw that post that dude wrote about if the government put in a girlfriend plan. What the fuck is this? That's communism. That is sexual communism.
And the thing is, you hear a lot of this stuff, and it's really freaky when you speak to people like Max. People like that will have women.
He's actually autistic and gay.
I know. People like that will have.
He's been raised by 2 gay men, so you know how much it fucks up.
Yeah, so
not all gay couples, obviously.
To be fair though, I don't think I came across the article. I don't think we should bring that kind of private stuff into public eye. Like I read it and I was like, this kind of information really, I shouldn't even be saying it. People will look it up and they'll use it.
In a lot of trouble. Like
no, but the thing is, people don't. Let's not promote it because people bring up that stuff and use it on him. That's not what we do. That's not what we do. But when we were talking about
Jedi,
oh yeah. But Jedi can look after himself. Max is autistic.
No one's dumb enough to make that kind of joke to Jedi.
Yeah. So. You know what I mean? So, as much as I disagree with Max, I don't think he should be subject to
at least Jedi's not getting on the news. You know?
It's true. That's the only reason I've found the other article.
Don't roast me like you know me.
Nah, he's cool actually. I like Jedi.
But
I think somebody told me about his personal.
I'll tell you in a second. But when we are talking about the whole feminism, we're talking about the female and male kind of relationships in particular. We have to be very careful. And when you were saying the whole 5 women to 1 man thing, that's a very male constructed idea. When you look at the biology behind sexuality and sexuality in male and female, you find that women actually are more polygamous or more entitled to be polygamous than men. And even men, our biology demonstrates that. I'll give you 3 examples.
The ability to be more
absolutely.
So, you know, observation of both animal species, you know, there's always like a patriarchy system where the top male is the only one who's mating with the females.
It's true, but we also have animals in general that the females will get piped up.
Well,
the females will have sex with all genetically kind of like good-looking males, supposedly. I don't know how to put that, but
it's obviously showing you have good genes, you know, and they want to bring that with their children.
And the strongest group of sperm will impregnate the female. So it's not about having the sex in general. It's about which offspring comes out at the end of the day for the animals. Now, when we're talking about women and the number of partners a man or a woman can have, let me give you 3 examples as to how a woman is more kind of more kind of like built to have various partners in comparison to a man. Women have more than 2 places that can be sexually stimulated. Right. Men only
they can have multiple orgasms.
Yeah, they can have multiple orgasms. Men can only have 1. Right. Women can go for a lot longer than men. Right.
Yep.
With men, the reason we have a crown on the top of our penis is apparently proven to scrape out previous male partner's sperm. This is the reason we have a crown on our penis. Thirdly, the first wave of sperm that we shoot inside is spermicide. Spermicide is like a fluid to kill sperm. So why would we need to kill sperm?
Want the best genes. They only the strongest sperm cells.
Exactly. It kills the previous sperm cells of who?
Of all the
partners beforehand. Exactly. So this is why, even in science, we can see that females have more of a facilitating features, and even men, we have things to indicate that female partners are more biologically inclined to have more partners than men.
But doesn't like the whole point of the guy fights all the other guys who want to challenge him. You know, as long as he's on top, then it's self-evident that he's got the best genes.
But the problem is with that, even in that society, we still have, like you say, I think it's in Finland, 1 out of 2 births are not even the real fathers, the biological fathers. So even if you beat down someone else, right, doesn't necessarily mean that because you're piping someone that the child is automatically yours. That's just an assumption that we've created in this culture of patriarchy.
Well, I do say, like, obviously a lot of the girls who were victims of Bosnian and all those places, a lot of them were asking for it when they saw like Muslims in their cars, you know, offering them stuff, and obviously they can't help but be attracted to the dominant male because, you know.
I think it's hard because it's difficult when there's a pleasure reward system, and that's how we basically kind of like I guess conduct ourselves. Even with sex, there's a pleasure reward system. A lot of women like resources, a lot of women like to get stuff using sex.
Yeah, and they want to be protected.
Absolutely. So when you see someone with a flash car, you see someone with money, regardless of race, religion, whatever, you're already ticking. You're already ticking. You're like, this guy can provide, you know, he can look after me. Exactly, it's a status thing. So it's difficult. I would never
do the fingers like rings.
Absolutely. It's difficult to say that. I would never say that anyone deserves it, but I guess there is a kind of adult conversation to be had that there are grooming techniques that do work, and we need to teach women how to watch out for these things. Not that they don't know this, but...
Well, they need to be educated into knowing what is going to be a good choice of male for them, you know, and yeah, it's just like, there's so many like people just like just making those awful choices and then become almost subservient and got Stockholm syndrome to being with a relationship that is like toxic as fuck, you know? And then there's the complete opposite factor with the Me Too movement, where every guy who's not even like do anything that was even rapey still could be interpreted like that and his life's ruined, you know.
Do you know what's weird? I find it so weird about that whole concept in general. The fact that we can see the Me Too movement as a Western society, and that's everyone in the West, that's black, white, whatever. We can see the Me Too movement.
In Africa, I'm not saying in America.
No. I meant as in like, we as men can acknowledge the Me Too movement and be like, not all men. But as soon as it's Rotherham, it's all Muslims. Do you know what I mean? There's a very selective kind of like blanketing of these movements, and this is the one thing I have.
I mean, can you really like comparison like the Catholic Church pedophile rings to the Muslims ones?
Of course.
Can I say
something? I don't see like Catholic priests and gangs in their cars, you know, hunting little girls.
No, they just need
more like manipulation with their Catholic boys. Yeah, exactly.
Well, the thing is, all they needed to do is stay in the church. They knew they had power not over only the boys, they had power over the families as well. In Northern Ireland, one of the biggest things was that the priest was pretty much ahead of the village.
And he was protected.
Yeah,
that's
he
the
was
thing, and these Muslims are protected. None of it would have happened if the law was applied
But the thing is, no one would have said all Irish men. No one would have said all Irish priests. Most people just acknowledge that. Most people just acknowledge that there was a problem within the church. A lot of people saying like before they raped these girls, they were like reciting stuff from the Quran, you know, to justify. I've only found 2 people, and they're of the same. That's all they say. Saying like white girls are trash, we can do what we want because our prophet said we can like fuck these other girls.
If they believe that, sorry,
go. You got 10 minutes.
A lot of people try to connect the whole Prophet Muhammad thing to the whole thing that's going on in Rotherham.
It's just what they're saying. You know?
No. It's just, in a lot of these cases, these men have been going to clubs, drinking alcohol, doing drugs. Now, to my knowledge, I don't know any cases in the Quran, Hadith, or whatever, explaining, oh, hey, give these girls drugs and get them drunk, and then bang them. You know, usually when they did take concubines, it was usually a war prize. And
yeah, but you know, they're not doing it to other Muslim girls. Maybe some Sikhs, maybe some Hindus.
They are doing it to Muslim girls.
If they're married, obviously.
No. That's the one myth. It's definitely overrepresented in terms of they're not doing it to their own, but they're doing it more to white women. But that's, again, a population thing. It's supposedly proportional. It's more like a tradition, you know, like the North African sea trade, where they would take entire coastal communities from Europe and, you know, the only thing is, I feel like that's almost white society saying that there's a racial element of it, right? Without having to prove it. When it's the opposite, in effect, I'll give you Cynthia Jones, is it? Supposedly in America, the girl who shot her own rapist and served so much time in prison. When it's other women and women of different orientations or whatever, we have the hardest time believing them. And we have the hardest time believing it's about race. But as soon as this happens in Rotherham, we already bring up the racial element and it's accepted without flaw.
No, they try to downplay it all the time.
So they try to tell the truth.
Well, who?
The police tried to tell the truth that these were people who took advantage of girls in poor situations. These weren't middle class girls getting raped.
Even if they had good intentions, they couldn't report it because they're being deemed as racist.
Who's that? The police?
Can I say something?
The Labour councils.
The only reason I disagree with that is because the police have systematically been found misrepresenting statistics in terms of race or ethnicity. They would systematically label people who are of white skin as Asian. How do you do that? So I don't think the police have any trouble being seen as racist at all. I don't think they have any trouble.
Can I say sorry? I think they also didn't really want there to be I think it was said that they didn't want it to be the far right to get a hold of this. And they weren't trying to downplay it. They were trying to be like, we're arresting paedophiles, that's it. The race, religion has nothing to do with it. You know, if the far right get a hold of this, then they're going to constantly turn the racial element to it.
Yeah, but you should have like stopped it down while it's small, rather than let it grow to exponential.
I mean, do you think that they just knew that they were doing it and they just ignored it? I mean, I find that hard to believe.
No, they're literally like Labour councils who are, whether they are whites who are guilty or people from Asia or Africa, say like, no, you cannot criticise the Pakistanis who they already had it so bad. If you let this information go out, there's going to be riots and whatever.
Can I say something about Me Too? For me, in my opinion, and Me Too, right, it's kind of like stop and search in my opinion. Because I've got nothing to hide, you know, I've got nothing to worry about. Same thing, because I don't sexually harass women, I'm not really worried about getting Me Too. Because it's like, if you just, in my opinion, like, I just
it's like the Gillette advert.
The
Gillette advert. Nothing I saw in the Gillette advert, people of colour haven't been asked to do anyway. I watched a Gillette advert and I thought, black men get asked to do this every day. We get asked to dress better, to speak better, a little bit more clear, stop using fog tones, and we won't get stopped and searched. We'll get shot in the middle of the guys who are about to approach the girls. What you were saying in the advert where all the men who were about to approach the girls, or one said, or smile more, there was always like a black guy or a man of colour saying, like, don't do that, not cool, not cool.
There was a black guy, that went, oh, boys will be boys. He was also...
Yeah, but every time that white guy was about to approach a girl, saying like, it was a black guy saying, no, don't do that, it's not cool.
But that's a big problem. Why is it when in reverse it's a black guy telling a white guy, hey bro, you could do a bit better?
Yeah.
It's a big problem. Everyone wants to boycott Gillette. But if a white guy says it to the thing, right? Everyone's like, oh, you know what? Statistically, he's He's completely right. Like,
no, they'll say that's racist, you know.
No, Stefan Molyneux was like, they were saying...
Nowadays? When was the last time you heard a media outlet call anyone a racist?
No, it's just if you simply had a commercial where a white person, or a black person will approach someone and the white guy saying, nah, not cool, everyone would be saying like, oh, that is just fucking racist.
I don't agree. You have to give me an example of an answer.
Yeah, I'm sorry, because I saw the same thing and I was thinking, come on, like, really? Like, I didn't even, the fact that it was a black guy saying to another white guy, oh, hey, yeah, don't do that. Meant nothing to me. For me, the advert was pure about men. But then we also have to ignore the fact that there was also a black guy being a dickhead on the barbecue going, oh, well, boys will be boys. Like, so.
Yeah, and
it's
then
like
the white guy is just nodding their heads.
Yeah, exactly. So, and they ignore the arsehole black guy, but they acknowledge the.
It wasn't being an arsehole, it was being true. Boys will be boys.
Oh,
let boys have a little play. What's wrong with that?
The thing is, the advert itself, right? It portrayed everything, or in general, negative aspects. It didn't do what other adverts do, right? Get a situation that's thoroughly in the grey, like someone wanting to talk to a girl on the train or whatever, etc., right? And then paint it off as something demonizing. These are things that we can actually change. Bullying is something we can change. Sexual harassment in actual inappropriate workplaces, that's something we can change.
We don't know what the rules are.
Can I say something? Can I say something about the kind of like, oh, why is it we only pick on Western men and we don't pick on the Middle East?
We don't.
In my opinion, I think Western countries, Western standards. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not gonna hold Western standards. I think if Saudi Arabia want to start acting like normal people, then I'll be like, yo, Saudi Arabia, you know, stop bombing Yemen and start acting like proper Muslims for a change.
Another thing as well that I would ask, and
I've got to go, man. It was cool seeing you guys.
Another thing I've got to ask is, I think generally as well, when we're talking about the standards that we hold each other to, with the Gillette advert, I think the backlash itself has shown just the dramatic standard of how certain races of men are held and other races of men are held. Because adverts and media depicting how certain people could be better has existed for ages. And we see this everywhere with black girls. I don't understand how in this day and age where in a majority Western nation, right, you can't get an advert where majority of the perpetrators are just of the country's ethnicity. What is the problem with that? It's not a problem when it's...
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, there's always all these things where it's a film from Netflix, like, what is it, Bird Box, all these other things. There's always these slight details that always try to make minorities as the white knights and white people as the bad people, you know.
The problem is, these things are not new. If we go back 30 years ago, this was just in reverse. It's just the white guy was in the position that it was a little bit more flattering. Interracial relationship. I remember I saw on Bird Box, everyone was complaining that supposedly there was a hint of interracial relationship. It was a white woman and a black man. Now, what you want to do, that's your beef. But when it was China, the Japanese woman, right, constantly being put across with the American white lover, no one had a problem. No one was saying that someone's trying to push an agenda. Why is it?
The Walking Dead, for example.
Yeah, The Walking Dead.
Every couple was mixed race.
Not every couple.
White guy with a white girl with a Japanese guy, a white guy with a black girl. You know, I didn't see a single same race unless it was a gay relationship.
But you know, with The Walking Dead is actually from a comic, right?
Yeah, no.
It's source material.
Yeah.
So this is something
that doesn't change the fact that the agenda was to always promote a mixed relationship, but not to have a same race relationship.
But the problem is, I would say, why is it now a problem, and why is it an agenda?
Because that's part of the neo-Marxist.
No, but I'm asking, if you put a white couple, is that an agenda as well?
No, because that's always happened. You know, I wouldn't see it as agenda if it was a black couple or a white couple together. And if it was a small percentage of mixed race or small percentage of different same genders or whatever, I'll be fine with it. But you know, they're not even trying to hide it now.
But the thing is, when you say
self-evident.
I was going to say, when you say there's a small proportion, right? Majority of the films are Caucasian.
Yeah,
majority. Now there is a rising rise in the trend of mixed couples. Now, only now, and I can confirm this because I keep quite the eye on this. I keep quite the I guess the academic on this as well. So when we're talking about the representation, right? The representation has only arisen in the last 2 years. We're in 2019. Films have been going on. Hollywood has been going on since the 50s. since then, and ever since before then, it's just been white on white. And then if it's interracial, right, it's never white woman and someone else, or hardly ever white woman and someone else. It's white man and someone else. No one calls this an agenda when that happens. Why is it all of a sudden now an agenda?
Actually, in the past, films did have an agenda, but it was a lot more subtle.
They did. Yeah. I agree.
But now it's not subtle. Surely you would acknowledge that. You know?
No, I agree. But why do we have a problem now? The agenda wasn't a problem before, but now it is a problem. I agree.
Because it's not being art for art's sake. It's all political.
Yeah, absolutely.
They all want to put in this narrative that everyone should, be dating outside their race. They should all be mixed race in the future. Absolutely. And exactly what these particular architecture of the EU wanted. They wanted to say, the man of future will be of mixed race. The Eurasian Negroid race will completely destroy any diversity of people and only diversity of individuals.
But the problem is, when we say it will destroy diversity, we need to understand that these are people of mixed heritage. So a mixed race person is not the same as another mixed race person.
Yeah.
Mixed race person can be half Italian.
So it doesn't matter. There's still going to be conflicts of people of different shades.
Absolutely. Different shades, different cultures, different upbringings, etc. And we can see this in Africa. Yeah. Right? People of the same system.
Yeah, I wouldn't tell apart with some Africans, but they fucking hate the statues.
Absolutely. So I think when we're talking about an agenda, my biggest problem when people call it an agenda is that the people calling it now an agenda didn't have a problem with the agenda that was being put forward back in the day.
Because back in the past, in like the 80s, 70s, it was overwhelmingly white.
Yeah.
And now that, there's more and more minorities, they feel like, we can now fully, let go of the pretense and just tell what we're all about.
I know, but I would say the majority of the Middle East is majority Middle Eastern.
I mean, if there was these films nowadays back in the 70s and 80s, people like see it blatantly like anti-white or racist.
Oh, absolutely. Well, when I say the representation, right, and we're talking about representation, and like you said, it's majority white, etc. Africa is majority African.
Yeah.
Australia was majority Aboriginal.
Yep.
China is you get where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
But we have Tarzan. We have the Mummy. We have, Aladdin. Not even Aladdin now. I shouldn't really say Aladdin. But we have all of these films, right, that cast European males in different countries.
Oh yeah, no, I totally accept that. Whitewashing was a thing.
Absolutely.
That's more the case of like, we want a famous name, like who's that guy?
Yeah, I agree. Ridley Scott said this with Exodus, Kings and Gods, etc. He was saying that certain people will not bring in a big name, and they're not going to put in a massive investment not to see that come back. And I can understand that, but we're talking about the political narrative. Now, we are talking about the political narrative, and we can see even now with Star Wars, right? One of the biggest setbacks for Star Wars is the fact that there isn't a European male in a positive role. All the European males, or supposedly a good majority of European males, are now on the opposing side.
They even say it in the film, saying, let the past die, kill it if you have to.
Kill it if you have to. But the problem is, are we talking about European males, or are we talking about white supremacy? That's the question. Ooh. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Well, I don't know. I think where's the line when it comes to you're imposing white supremacy? What if it was simply like, I just like I feel it's great when I go to a white majority town and I feel at ease and peace. Is that white supremacy?
I think one of the biggest problems is that we assume, and not me and you, but a lot of people assume that white supremacy just default means white people. It just never means white people, because it doesn't mean Tommy Robinson. Tommy Robinson is far from white supremacist. White supremacy won't even have anything to do with Tommy Robinson. But there's this ignorant notion that working class people are inherently part of a bigger culture, as in the working class Brits are now part of the, when we say white supremacy, they're part of the people who put legislations, put rules, put borders in place to stop other people from different ethnicities progressing in life. Now, when we're talking about white supremacy, right, and we're talking about Star Wars, why is it all of a sudden we forget that even though there's no white male characters in lead roles, the lead character of the Star Wars films and the Star Wars franchise now is a white woman still.
Yeah, she's a Mary Sue. You know, she has no. Even in phones.
So when you pray,